Warning, the following 8-bit late month starting Easter Mania 420 flick is for mature as well as immature audiences as well. Viewer discretions have been advised. The following footage takes place approximately 1 week prior to this week's Indy Radio Arcade.
Oh man, Carl and the Maestro, I got nothing for this week's show. We don't have a game, we don't have a movie, we don't have anything. I mean, the only choice for us to do is just to wait till next week. Hey, wait, before you leave, we're gonna have to wait until next week to have the show. I know you're eager to get out of here, but at the same time, there's gonna be a big event taking place next week, and we've got to be on the helm for that. And plus, technically, it'll make up for last year's fact that we weren't able to bring an Easter show to you during the month of madness. But wouldn't this be Easter Mania? You know what? That has a nice ring to it. Easter Mania. Carl and the Maestro, get ready. I got a $64,000 question just as big as the event itself. Let's do this. All right. Ring the bell. Ring the bell. Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, live from Morristown, New Jersey, it is the level 221 edition of the Indy Radio. Okay. Now here's your host, a man who is crazy enough to have a show with Easter 420 and WrestleMania wrapped into one big package, DJ Smokey. Hey, it was the best idea I had to come up with to make up for last year's little faux pas. Give me a break. But besides that, folks, welcome to the Indy Radio Arcade Level 221 edition. I am your game show host from the East Coast, DJ Smokey. And we've got plenty of that 8-bit goodness to wrap your Easter weekend up on a good note. And with plenty of Easter eggs, too. Because we kick things off with a very special 8-bit pay-per-view edition of WrestleMania 41 from Viva Las Vegas. And yeah, Elvis might show up for that too. I don't know. Next up on the plate, we go into a very special silent movie edition of the 3M Awe. And according to Carl and the Maestro, only one person is silent during this said film. Oh yeah, you're right. But it's the best hint we can give you, and they're from Jersey as a heads up. Then we put your high scores on high display along with some indie games along the way for another edition of the Indy Wall of Fame. Then finally, last but not least, we wrap up the show with a very special $420,000 question. And with WrestleMania, Easter, and 420 rolled up into one big holiday for this week, yeah, we're gonna make that said challenge as big as all three of them. And I guess with Carl and the Maestro rolling the machines, I might as well tell everybody at home to get out their pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes, Albanian money, or whatever sort of coins you think that can help you win an Easter egg hunt with the Easter Bunny hot on your trail to get ready to play a very special 8-bit Easter Mania 420 month late starting edition of the Indy Radio. Okay. It's time to play the game, kids. Right, all you game show contestants, and I guess a couple of you 8-bit wrestling fans celebrating the biggest weekend of the year. Welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into a very special edition of the 8-bit pay-per-view. And the pay-per-view we have up for this week is none other than the 41st annual WrestleMania from Las Vegas, Nevada. That I almost called Los Angeles, but at the same time, to confuse the City of Angels with Sin City is a sin within itself. But this took place in some other place we like to call Viva Las Vegas. And for those wondering at home, this would be the second WrestleMania to take place in Las Vegas since Caesar Palace for WrestleMania 9. And WrestleMania would open up with none other than Triple H welcoming everybody to WrestleMania, watched all around the world thanks to Netflix. And of course, with Jelly Roll singing the national anthem. But the first match to take place on the grand stage of WrestleMania would be none other than Jey Uso going one-on-one against the ring general himself, Gunther, for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, before we start breaking down these matches, there will be factoids for it as well too, because this would be the third time in the history of WrestleMania that the Royal Rumble winner will kick off WrestleMania. And I do believe the fourth time we would see a world championship defended in the opening of WrestleMania. And for examples, Del Rio versus Edge at WrestleMania 27. Sheamus winning the Royal Rumble to fight against Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 28. And even Brock Lesnar going one-on-one against Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 35. And before we go any further into that, folks, one thing we really have to point out is how immaculate that stage is. Because there was actually people sitting up on the upper part of the stage itself. I've never in all my years of watching WrestleMania have ever seen people standing or sitting on the top of the stage to watch the show. How much did those tickets cost? And Carl and the Maestro said probably $400 to $500. Yeah, add a couple of more bucks to that, because I got a feeling that's more expensive than that. But outside of the cool, immaculate stage of WrestleMania for this year, we would see Salvatore mixing Jey Uso's entrance as he would yeet his way down to the ring with well over 60,000 fans, and of course the Raidettes, or the Las Vegas Raiders, yeeting with him to the way to the ring. And the cool thing about this stage, folks, and I can't get my mind off this stage of how cool it is, they would have miniature plates on the top that had the superstars' faces on them with the cards, actually showing a Titantron for the wrestlers, which I hope they bring back in the future. You know, the actual Titantrons instead of the whole logo plate thing they've been doing for the past several years. But during this match, as Gunther would make his way to the ring with a Von Villain-like entrance, which was pretty cool, we would see Jey Uso striking during this match with a nasty spear for a near fall. Even seeing a superplex, T-Rex dropkick, and powerbomb combination reminding me of Ganesha from Bloody Roar by Gunther during this match, still for near fall. A powerbomb reversal into a spear after a Hurricane Rana and an Uso splash, still a near fall. Even seeing Gunther trying to take his belt and go home, only to use a bit of chicanery by hitting none other than Jey Uso in the face with a championship belt and following it up with a splash of his own, still for near fall. But ultimately, this match would come to an emphatic end with a taste of a goose that's good for the gander. And what do I mean by that, folks? Well, as Gunther would try to go for a title retention powerbomb, we would see Jey Uso pulling off a powerbomb of his own, 2 super kicks, and 3 separate Uso splashes with a sleeper twist afterwards for Jey Uso to win the World Heavyweight Championship in the opening of WrestleMania via pinfall. Or submission. We got a little bit excited with that. He won by submission. And to make things even sweeter for him, his brother would come out to celebrate the win alongside with him as he would make his way up to the ramp with fans yeeting still. And of course, one screaming fan behind him as the camera would fade to black. And the next match to take place at the grand stage of WrestleMania would see the New Day going one-on-one against the War Raiders. Now, prior to New Day making their way to the ring, they would get in an argument with San Francisco's own player of George Kittle and the announcers, only for the War Raiders to come out, and I got a feeling in an outfit themed after Clash of Clans, seeing Eric showing up as the Barbarian King and Ivar as P.E.K.K.A, with Pat McAfee with some cool video game knowledge, and unfortunately no Hog Rider to help him out during this set contest. And I got a feeling they might have needed his help, because during this match, despite them pulling off not only an assisted body slam to the outside of the ring from the apron by the Viking Raiders, or the War Raiders, yeah, I got that wrong by accident, Carl and the Maestro, but then seeing none other than Ivar pulling off a Mike Knox splash, and then even an assisted splash toss to Xavier Woods for near fall. Even seeing Kofi pulling off a big boy senton from the top rope onto the apron onto the neck of Eric for near fall. Even seeing a famouser by Kofi Kingston and a double stomp by Xavier Woods, both for near falls on Eric. Then seeing none other than Ivar pulling off a spinning heel kick and a doomsault getting countered by Xavier Woods just in the nick of time to turn it into a near fall. But ultimately, this match would come to an end again after the War Machine would get countered, leaving Ivar to get yanked off from the ropes before the move could get completed. Then for Kofi Kingston to hit Daybreak on Ivar and grab the foot of one Ivar during this to prevent him from getting the win. And then for the New Day to win the Tag Team Championships on the grand stage of WrestleMania via pinfall. And a very controversial way of winning the titles too, I may add. And right after they got done winning those championships, what did you think they would do after that? Run for the hills. And rightfully so, because I got a feeling the War Raiders would have definitely beat the daylights out of them for doing that. And the next match to take place on the grand stage of WrestleMania would see none other than Jade going one-on-one against Naomi. Now, if my memory serves me correct, and I could be wrong about this one, folks, this would be the first singles match that we would see that would not have a championship on the line between two women and a personal rivalry between the two in well over 20 years. Because I'm pretty sure the last time we would see something like this, and I could be wrong, would be China versus Ivory at WrestleMania. And Carl and the Maestro said you might be thinking of Victoria versus Molly Holly. But I thought that was for a belt. And as we try to get our facts straight here, folks, Naomi would end up making her way through to the ring with some caution tape for her entrance and a brand new entrance song too. That's a little bit more heavy metal than the techno that we're used to. Only for Jade to make her way to the ring with a weather update from Jim Katuri, and of course a very interesting gold outfit to go along with it as well too. Which, I'm surprised. I thought she would have dressed up like Storm for WrestleMania for this year. You know, with a storm coming, and the storm that would be featured during this match, because despite Naomi pulling off a leg drop during this said contest for near fall, we would see the power game in full effect. Because Jade would be able to counter a blockbuster directly into a jackhammer for a near fall. only for Naomi to strike back with a wheelbarrow bulldog and a split-legged moonsault for a near fall, for Naomi to feel the full wrath of the storm and get caught in the eye of it, with not only an electric chair that got switched out into a power bomb, leading into a Jaded immediately after that, for Jade to get her revenge and for Naomi to really need that caution tape for the bit of violence she underwent this match via pinfall. And I do believe that makes Jade 2-0 at WrestleMania. And the next match to take place on the grand stage of WrestleMania would see none other than LA Knight, going one-on-one against the Samoan werewolf himself, Jacob Fatu. And before this match could even begin, with a little support from Solo for his entrance, we would see the Samoan werewolf coming out with a wolf mask. And a mask that sort of reminded me of one of the masks that may have been featured during the classic Jim Carrey film of The Mask. But he wasn't out there to sing Cuban Pete, I'll just tell you that much right now. And what of LA Knight? Well, he would show up in style in a 2025 Maserati. Now, we don't know the full make and model of the car, but I got a feeling a couple of you car nuts do, and we'll just leave it at that. Because outside of fancy entrances during this match, Jacob Fatu would be rolling on all cylinders and would truly live to all gas, no brakes. Because he would be able to counter a power slam into more or less he would counter a move off the top rope into a power slam for near fall. Even seeing LA Knight pulling off his dummy elbow on a standing man reminding me of Dean Ambrose, still for near fall. A avalanche German suplex to counter a moonsault, still a near fall. 3 bulldozer smashes out of the corner and a swanton from the Samoan werewolf, still a near fall. But possibly one of the most impressive moves of the night would see the Samoan moonsault, is what we're gonna call it, getting countered directly into a BFT for a near fall, thanks to the fact that Jacob knew the ropes was right next to him. But ultimately, this match would come to an emphatic end after we would see Jacob Fatu super kick the leg of LA Knight from underneath him, causing him to get hit with a senton while he was placed on the top rope by Jacob Fatu with some very crazy offense, following it up with an avalanche Samoan drop and 2 Samoan moonsaults for the Samoan werewolf to win this match and howl at the moon that may have been out during that match, we don't know, via pinfall. And after the match was over, we would see Haku coming out to celebrate and congratulate the Samoan werewolf for the big win. Nice! And the next match to take place on this said pay-per-view of WrestleMania would see none other than Rey Fenix going one-on-one against El Grande Americano. Now, for those who are a little bit confused of what in the world's going on and why Rey Fenix is here on the grand stage, well, unfortunately, Rey Mysterio during the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal on SmackDown this past Friday would suffer an injury. And while suffering an injury, he would have to get a last-minute replacement in the form of Rey Fenix. Now, the fact that he didn't ask Dragon Lee to make up for the WrestleMania he couldn't participate in last year thanks to Carlito, I think is a little slap in the face if you ask me, but at the same time, it gave a chance for, I guess, El Grande Americano to get caught off his feet. But let's just say El Grande Americano during this match, he would decide to go full Nacho Libre with not only a cool looking cape, but mariachis to play him to the ring. Would see Rey Fenix making his way to the ring with a cool looking jacket with his name on it and another mask over his regular mask. But at the same time, it makes me wonder what sort of mask we were gonna see Rey Mysterio in. Seriously, I would have loved to find out what sort of crazy outfit themed after Marvel, DC, or any superhero he can get his hands on that was going to be featured for this year. I was really hoping for Iron Man or the Hulk or something, but I guess we're going to have to wait until next year. And as another announcement, we're just getting into our headphones here. Apparently, during the whole thing this afternoon, Rey Mysterio would announce that AAA would get acquired by WWE. And what would that mean for this match, folks? Well, we would see Vikingo at ringside getting in an argument with El Grande Americano, leading to a step-up enzuigiri right to the face to kick off this match in a absolutely hilarious way. And would that throw El Grande Americano off his game for this match? Well, not at all, because despite Rey Fenix pulling off a mid-rope Hurricane Rana for a near fall, even seeing El Grande pulling off a Northern Lights counter off of a helo from the ropes for near fall, even a belly-to-belly suplex, and the craziest move of the night, we'll say, in a reverse 450 senton by El Grande Americano during this match for near fall, only for Rey Fenix to respond back with a fire driver still for a near fall. After El Grande would throw everything but the kitchen sink at Rey Fenix during this match and not able to get the job done, where do you think he would go next? Well, he would go right into his, trousers or jumpsuit or whatever the world he's got, and would decide to pull out the piece of metal, heavy metal that is, to help him win this match. Because right after we would see Rey Fenix trying to go for that Sayonara Amigo kick to the head of El Grande Americano, he would kick nothing but metal in that helmet, only for the headbutt to strike and the diving headbutt to follow afterwards, for Rey Fenix to lose his debut match on the grand stage of WrestleMania, but for El Grande Americano to walk out a winner via pinfall. And the next match to take place on this said pay-per-view of WrestleMania would see none other than Tiffany Stratton going one-on-one against the Queen City's own Charlotte Flair for the Women's Undisputed Championship. And Tiffany Stratton coming down to the ring with an idea she had since NXT to become a living Barbie doll to come out of a Barbie playbox, which was pretty cool to see on the stage. But Charlotte, in a case of one-upsmanship, would decide to show up in a Rolls Royce with a hotel entrance for the Queen. At first I thought she was going to show up in a helicopter like she did at WrestleMania 35, but, showing up in a Rolls Royce is just as good, and with plenty of flair. And speaking of things that had flair in this match, folks, during this match where action would go back and forth, would see not only 2 sets of handspring back elbows into the corner, followed up by a spine buster for a near fall by Tiffany Stratton. Then would see a royal beheading big boot by Charlotte Flair for a near fall. Sit out powerbomb counter after she would try to go for the, cartwheel Alabama slam for a near fall. Then would see Tiffany Stratton hitting another spine buster on the pine for a near fall. Crossbody counter, no dice, only for this match to come to an emphatic end after we would see Charlotte Flair getting hit with a Alabama slam after her head would get ran into the said turnbuckle post by her own doing, most likely trying to go for a spear. Then see her get hit with a rolling steamroller and a prettiest moonsault ever on the biggest stage of WrestleMania, for surprisingly Tiffany Stratton to walk out of WrestleMania and for Charlotte Flair not to capture her 16th world title via pinfall. Now, Cole and Pat McAfee would say that it would be her 15th world title win, but I guess they missed the Divas Championship or another championship or 2 in the closet of Charlotte Flair, because she would have had 16 tonight if she had a won. And before I forget, and not to gloss over it, a very impressive avalanche version of a natural selection by Charlotte Flair during this match, and Tiffany Stratton with a chip in her tooth and a welt on her head, very excited about the fact that she was able to retain against Charlotte Flair. And congratulations too. And the next match to take place on the grand stage of WrestleMania would be our main event of night 1. which would see none other than Seth Metal Seth Rollins going one-on-one against CM Punk and Roman Reigns. And this would be the first main event in WrestleMania history that will be a triple threat match with no championship on the line. And to correct myself from earlier, because we got a little bit of heat on this one, Seth Rollins would be participating in his second main event in WrestleMania history. If you count the whole Roman Reigns and The Rock teaming up with Cody Rhodes and Seth, that little matchup, that counted as the main event. And according to Carl and the Maestro, when he cashed in Money in the Bank, he was in the main event of that match too. So that would make his match a third match at WrestleMania in the main event. You know, we'll go with it. We'll go with it. But speaking of Seth Rollins during this said entrance that he would have, which a lot of people out there, me included, thought he was gonna dress up like a Vegas showgirl and come out to the ring with bottle service, instead would show up with a flamethrower and a giant oversized black robe and would decide to burn it down and turn the lights out, only to show up in an all-white angelic outfit, and yeah, just in time around Easter for CrossFit Jesus to dress up like an angel. Not bad, not bad. Then Roman Reigns making his way out to the ring wearing black and white and some pretty cool kicks to go along with it, but as he would make his way down to the ring, would have the NOYE family following him down to the ring with the said plates we mentioned earlier that descended from the sky to show every generation of the NOYE family as he would make his way down to the ring, which was pretty cool to see. Then for CM Punk, outside of going back to his original ECW days and cutting a promo about this being his main event for WrestleMania with this Fire Burns playing in the background and 61,000 strong singing the song along with it, would then see him in his first WrestleMania in 12 years since WrestleMania 29, where he went one-on-one against the Dead Man, once again calling the services of Living Color to play him to the ring to truly prove it's clobbering time. Or Carl and the Maestro said, if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it right. Okay, it's clobbering time, which was pretty cool to see. And to make things even sweeter for CM Punk in his first main event in his career, he would come out in his classic SummerSlam gear too. Not bad, not bad. But outside of the oohs and ahs of entrances that would take place before this match was nothing short of a war. Because not only we would see garbage cans flying around, people getting hit in the crowd, and not to mention Roman Reigns nearly taking out the first section of fans in the front, and even the prime, or what we call around here, the sugar water that was out front. For calling the Maestro to laugh at that comment, I know. But also seeing a doomsday device to Seth Rollins and a Superman punch by Roman Reigns to CM Punk for near fall. Even seeing a Uranagi that would lead to an Anaconda Vice for near fall, but would get broken up thanks to a frog splash by Seth Rollins and CM Punk for near fall of Roman Reigns. Even seeing a counter of the said pedigree, or more or less the spear, into a pedigree and a stomp follow-up for near fall. Even seeing Seth Rollins getting hit with a spear and a GTS to Roman Reigns by CM Punk for near fall. Pedigree during this match, no dice. Seth Rollins trying to convince Roman Reigns to take out CM Punk and put him to the table with the Shield Bomb, for Roman Reigns to just knock him out, put him through a table, and CM Punk only for action to get back inside the ring with a spear, and a charged up spear, almost the same one he did to Undertaker at WrestleMania 33, that unfortunately would only lead to a near fall. Then in the craziest moment in this match, we would see not only a GTS to Seth Rollins, spear to CM Punk, and somehow Seth having enough energy in him to hit a stomp, still for near fall. And Cole and Maestro would say that This would be the craziest moment in this match because it would all come to an end as we would see CM Punk getting a chair from Paul Heyman but would not be able to use it. Low blow for Roman Reigns to get the chair for the tribal chief advocate, or more or less wise man, to wisely give the chair to Roman to deliver 3 chair shots to CM Punk. But the second he would take his eyes off the ball thanks to Paul Heyman bringing up the Shield once again, which seems to be a trigger word for Roman Reigns at this point in his life, would then try to give a chair shot to the spine of Seth Rollins, only for none other than Paul Heyman to give him a low blow and to really get in there for it, only for Seth Rollins to deliver yet another devastating chair shot to the spinal cord of Roman Reigns and a stomp right to the back of his head for Seth Rollins to win this match in Monday Night Messiah-like fashion via pinfall. And after the match was over with fans stunned and shocked, we would see Seth Rollins leaving with Roman Reigns, or more or less leaving with Roman Reigns' wise man of Paul Heyman. See how I corrected myself there? For Roman Reigns to watch as Paul Heyman raised Seth Rollins' hand high into the air to close out the first night of this year's WrestleMania in very controversial fashion. And for Seth Rollins most likely to go back to being the Monday Night Messiah like he was trying to be several years back. Yikes! Yikes! And with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to go grab a glass of water, and when we return, we'll be back with more of that 8-bit goodness as the Indy Radio Arcade rolls on, right after a word from our sponsors. So don't hit pause on those controllers just yet, folks, and stay tuned. All right, all of you moviegoers out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into a very special 10-film reel edition of the 3MR. And the movie we have up on the plate for you this week, folks, is a movie we should have addressed in the room well over a year ago, but is finally able to bring it into your homes just in time for Easter, which is none other than the 1999 film directed by Kevin Smith of Dogma. And according to Carl and the Maestro, they're cheering over in the corner about the fact that we're finally able to mention this said film, and so am I. So am I. And the meat and potatoes of this said film would feature none other than Bartleby and Loki, who decide to go on a Midwest trip straight to Jersey to try to get access back into heaven thanks to a loophole, leading to one girl being taxed to stop the two of them before it brings the end to the world. And with those meat and potatoes out of the way, folks, what did I love about this said film? Well, first off, the fact of how funny this film was. And of course, how controversial it was too, seeing the fact that on several different occasions, people tried to boycott this film from even being released. And yeah, according to Carl and the Maestro, several different boycotts for this film. Nice. Another thing that I loved about this film would have to be none other than the cast that was featured during it, including the two Jersey legends themselves, none other than Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, aka Jay and Silent Bob, who would be featured during this said film, but would also be featured in not only Clerks, Mallrats, but also featured during none other than Fanboys, and of course Chasing Amy as well too, just to name a few. And that's to cover the plate for Jay and Silent Bob. But for Jay himself, he was featured in, and according to Carl and the Maestro, a horror movie featuring a vampire they can't remember. Really? Usually I'm the one who don't remember things, but yeah, that's a first. And next up, outside of that, we have none other than Alanis Morissette, who would play God during this film of Dogma, but would also play none other than the soundtrack of the said City of Angels film, irony in that one, but would also be in a music video for herself back in '95, and of course provide the soundtrack for the Chronicles of Narnia. Next up on the plate, you would have none other than Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, who would both play Barnaby and Loki during this film of Dogma, but would see Matt Damon featured in not only Argo as a producer, but also as Doug McCrae in The Town, as well as playing Chucky in Good Will Hunting, Nick Dunn in Gone Girl, and even playing as a producer in The Accountant 2, and also a part of Kiss of the Spider-Woman. But for Matt Damon, he would be featured in not only as well Good Will Hunting, but also as Mark Whitney in part of The Martian, as well as Tom Ripley in The Talented Mr. Ripley, as well as playing Colin in The Departed, and also, according to Carl and the Maestro, is also going to be featured in The Accountant 2 and Kiss of the Spider-Woman as well. See, I should have included them both because they're both just like Jay and Silent Bob are both attached at the hip when it came to movies in the 90s. If you don't believe me, go back and check the track records, folks. Then you have none other than the late, great Alan Rickman, who would not only during this film would play, and according to Carl and the Maestro, would play Metatron, and I almost confused it for Megatron, that's why I almost hesitated in saying it, but would also play the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves in '91, Hans Gruber in the ever-classic Die Hard film, and as well as playing Elliot Marson in Quigley Down Under, Judge Turpin in Sweeney Todd, and of course, not to tick off the said Harry Potter fans, would also be featured in the said Harry Potter film as well too as Professor Severus Snape. Next up on the list, you would have none other than Selma Hayek, who would play Serendipity in this film of Dogma, but would also play Frida in the said film of Frida, as well as playing Carolina in Desperado, and playing Rita Escobar in the 1999 film of Wild Wild West. Now, the fact that Dogma and Wild Wild West came out in the same year and 4 years before this was Desperado is insane for her movie records. And also would be none other than Sunita, a part of the 2021 film of The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, and was also featured as Eva Torres, a part of the Hummingbird Project. Next on the list, you would have none other than Chris Rock, who would also be featured in this said film as Rufus, but would also be featured in the Jigsaw film of, well, Spiral, the Book of Jigsaw, as well as playing the caretaker in The Longest Yard, Marty in the Madagascar series, a producer of the movie Head of State, as well as playing Andre Allen in Top 5. And before I could possibly forget, was also featured as the comedian that made Eddie Murphy laugh during the outtakes of The Nutty Professor. And of course played Pookie, a part of New Jack City, and was even featured in a couple of comedy specials for Def Comedy Jam, just to name a few. Then next up on the plate, you would have none other than Jason Lee, who who would be featured as one of the devils that was incognito on Earth during this said film, but would also play Banky during Chasing Amy. Jeff Baby, a part of Almost Famous. Brian Shelby, a part of Vanilla Sky. Even none other than Beaver, a part of Dreamcatcher in 2003. And according to Carl and the Maestro, was Charlie, a part of the We Bare Bears film. And also was a part of the Jay and Silent Bob reboot as Brody, and featured in Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. Next up, outside of that, you would see none other than Linda Foriento, and hopefully we got that name right, and Carl and the Maestro give me the thumbs up saying close enough, who would play Bethany in this film of Dogma, but would also play Kiki in After Hours in 1985, Laurel, a part of the 97 film of Men in Black, knew she looked familiar, and also playing Bridget Gregory in The Last Seduction in 94. Not bad. Bad at all. Next up on the plate, and Carl and Michael said we can mention two more, would see none other than Bud Cort, who would play John Doe in this said film of Dogma, but would also play Romero, a part of Coyote Ugly in 2000. Private Boone in the film of MASH in 1970. And also would play Harold Chasen in Harold and Maude, as well as playing Bill Ubel, thank you for the correction, Carl and the Maestro, in The Aquatic Life. And finally, last but not least on this list, and yes, we have to mention him, Carl and the Maestro, the ever controversial comedian himself, George Carlin, who would play Cardinal Click, a part of this film of Dogma, but would also be a part of Jersey Girl as Bart Trink, as well as playing Rufus in the Bill and Ted series, and even featured a part of many, and I do mean many, episodes of Shining Time Station back in the day. Now, one of my favorite scenes, or should I say, two of my favorite scenes featured during the said film would have to be not only the Golden Cow office scene that would take place in this said film, but I would have to say my other favorite scene, a part of this movie, would have to be the fact that one of the demons would try to challenge Silent Bob to hit him with a golf club. And according to Carl and the Maestro, another one of their favorite scenes featuring Silent Bob would have to be the scene where they would throw off Bartleby and Loki off the said train, and he would say his first words during the film of, "No ticket." Going back to the old Indiana Jones days, and it took me years to realize that, but yeah, pretty awesome to see him pull off that scene but get thrown off the train at the next stop. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review films along the lines of Siskel and Ebert or any of those other famous film reviewers that you know of out there, we say this. If you guys want to go ahead and watch a film that features two angels trying to get back to heaven after being delocated and banished to the Midwest, and only for a litany list of stars from the sky to gather together to stop them from making that happen, but at the same time causing more chaos in the Northeast than one man could possibly handle, then I recommend you go out there and watch that flick. And trust me, folks, definitely a good film outside of the controversy of it all, but still an awesome film to watch. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back into that music once again, and when we return, we'll be back with more of the Indie Radio Arcade right after a word from our sponsors. So don't run out of quarters just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Right, all you kings and queens and leaderboards out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And two things. One, the movie you were thinking of, Carl and the Maestro, that Jason Mewes was in that involved vampires was called Bitten, and we'll mention that in October. Secondly, the fact that we were able to make up for something we had planned a year ago and bring it to you fans on a 420 Easter is absolutely awesome. And besides me being almost brought to tears to finally bring one of my plans to life that was sidetracked due to a couple of issues from last year, I think it's time for us to go ahead and put a couple of your high scores on high display, along with some cool indie games along the way, for a very special 420 Easter Mania edition of the Indy Wall of Fame. And the first game that we have up comes from the developers Good Games Entertainment with their said game of Super Crash. And this game automatically reminds me of Burnout. Well, at least the Crash mode featured for Burnout. Now, here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to actually make your own Crash-like map, but maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to compete against your friends to find out who can cause the most amount of damage. And usually in those cases, I would win, hands down, but Carl and the Maestro said they've got a strategy. Well, you're gonna use the cement truck? Apparently, if it's available, yes, they are. But besides trying to mix things up with a cement truck in a game filled with crashes, bangs, and wallops for a video like no other, and a little shout out to Alan Rickman, with the game we have up next, which is none other from the developers Red Axe Games of Drive-Thru Simulator. And this game automatically, for some reason, reminds me of Good Burger. Now, here's hoping in the near future you get a chance to name the restaurant first off. Secondly, maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to have multiple friends come along with you to try to run this restaurant as well too. And if not, here's hoping you can hire a good staff and crew to help you keep this place from getting shut down from the health department. Yeah, because I got a feeling with that state of that grill they have right there, they might get shut down within the next 2 weeks. That thing is filthy, filled with grease too. Ugh. But besides something that apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, will bring out more flavor for the burgers, the next game that we have up. Really? Really? More flavor for the burgers? All right. You know what? To get things back on track here, folks, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Tap Nice with their said game of Mine and Slash. And this game automatically reminds me of, I would have to say it reminds me of Faith with a little hint of, I guess, Motherlode? If you weren't inside of one of those giant mining machines. And Carl and the Maestro give me a thumbs up with the second one. And here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to get some cool weapons to help you as you make your way further into the mine, but also a chance for you to work alongside with a mage. Because not only it was featured during one of the screenshots, but I got a feeling further in those dungeons, you may have to fight a dragon. So here's hoping that you can have a mage to help you out for that problem. And Carl and the Maestro said they didn't see one single dragon in this, but yeah, you see that door on the right, far right, next to that bat and demon? That's a dragon. So here's hoping you get some support to take that thing out. And the next game that we have up, besides a possible dragon attack in a mine while you're trying to get diamonds and ores, comes from the developers Team with their said game of Rise of Rebellion. And this game automatically reminds me of, I would have to say, Dragon's Dogma. Yeah, it really reminds me of Dragon's Dogma with the fact that you don't have any pawns to help you out in combat. So here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to have different abilities to help you out in the battle, but maybe, just maybe, a morning star to help you against certain creatures that you're going to be fighting, including that giant oversized ogre that's blocking that one road. And according to Carl and the Maestro, that's not an ogre, that's a Cyclops. Really? Oh yeah, it is a Cyclops. I see it only has one eye. All right. Well, here's hoping you have something to combat against that. Because I got a feeling you're going to need some help against that giant oversized creature that can most likely throw boulders at you. I got a feeling. And the last but not least game that we have up to kick off this month of Fools for this year comes from the developers 0013. Nice name, but ominous, by the way, with their said game of Mirror Mirror. And this game automatically reminds me of Silent Hill with a little hint of that movie known as Mirrors. Now, here's hoping in the near future for this said film that not only do you get a chance to somehow get something to combat whatever in the world's gonna come out of a mirror to take you out, but maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to shatter the mirror to prevent it from coming out in the first place? And Carl in my show told me that, wouldn't that be 7 years bad luck? Yeah, I know it will, but it's gonna... I don't think anything's gonna be worse than being pulled into an alternative mirror universe or dimension from some mirror-like creature that might take your head off like that one Hellraiser film. And Carl and the Maestro asking me, do you think they really have that power? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So a chance to avoid that at all costs would be lovely. Just lovely. And with all those games out of the way, folks, the next thing we have up is the high scores from the Twin Galaxies. And the first high score that we have up comes from Chad Breck with their said high score of 308,480, a part of the Commodore 64 game of Popeye. Next high score that we have up comes from Andrew Peter Me with their said high score of well over a minute, 56.433 seconds. That was featured during the game of Forza Horizon 2 for the Xbox 360. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than Chad Brevik with their said high score of 1 million. On the nose, too, from the video game of Pole Position 2. Nice! And a classic game that I think I still own somewhere around here. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than Tony Gamer 79 with their said high score of 6,461,920, a part of the Sega Master System game of Hang On. Next high score that we have up after that comes from Crazy Moose 3K. Nice picture and cool name, by the way, with their said high score of 2 minutes, 36.63 seconds, a part of the Mickey Speedway USA game from the Grand Canyon race, a part of the Nintendo 64. Not bad. Not bad at all. Next high score that we have up once again comes from Crazy Moose 3K with their said high score of 100, which was featured during the Nintendo Switch game of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for the Mob Smash Century Smash using Young Link and Toon Link. We might as well include both records and link them together. Yeah, I did make a pun about that, Carl, in my show, what of it? And they said nothing. Anyway, next high score that we have up comes from TK 2014 with their said high score of 2 minutes, 37.5 seconds, a part of the Nintendo 64 game of Mickey Speedway, a part of the time trials for the Grand Canyon's fastest race. Seems to be a theme this week. Next high score after that comes from none other than Andrew Peterme with their said high score of 1,764, a part of the Android game of Hill Climb Racing 2, a part of the Adventure Racing Glacier map. Not bad. Next high score after that comes from none other than Paul Ford with their said high score of 11,425, a part of the Atari 2600 game of Ruby Q. And apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, it was under classic mode, under normal play, right? Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than Intellivision Master. Nice name, by the way, with their said high score of 2,512,070, a part of the Intellivision game of Astro Smash. Next high score after that comes from none other than TK 2014 with their said high score of 36,270, a part of the Commodore game of Pac-Man. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than David Gaithier with their said high score of 20,008,160, a part of the main game of Super Hang-On. Next high score after that comes from none other than Henrik Whitman with their said high score of 299,787,160, a part of the PC game of Kiss Netherworld Tournament. Never heard of it. And the last but not least high score that we have up for this week to kick off this month of Fools comes from none other than Star Soldier 1 with their said high score of 24,000, a part of the SNES game of Tough Enough. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool high scores that are still being run through the galaxies of the Twitterverse and from websites that are all named the same, then you can go ahead and head on over to the Twitter page and website that are both named the same, but it's just as critically acclaimed, of twingalaxies.com to win cool prizes for your high scores and have them mentioned on this very microphone for this very show, which is always a fair trade. It really is. And the high score to kick off this month of Fools for this year comes from none other than Henrik Wilman with their said high score of 299,787,160, a part of the PC game of Kiss Netherworld. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool games that are still coming through the Steam machine via the cargo ship, cargo plane, or even subterranean train that is currently rumbling underneath your toes, then you can go ahead and head on over to the store.steampower page, only known as store.steampower.com, and click ever so lightly on that upcoming button while clicking on that Indy button as well, to find a very adorable Easter rabbit holding on to one of these games that he was able to deliver out of one of the eggs. Huh. And Carl and the Maestro's wondering where in the world I got this rabbit from? Well, apparently as an avid owner of a top hat, rabbits occasionally come out of the hat. I don't know how, but it works. It works. Just like those cool games you got. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back into that music one more time. And when we return, we'll be back with another exciting, very specially named and critically acclaimed edition of the $420,000 question, right after a word from our sponsors. So don't skip out on that bonus round just yet, folks, and stay tuned.
Alright, all you Eastermania 420 fighting champions out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into a very special $420,000 question. But before we go into this week's question, we go into last week's question, or last month's question in this case, which was for upwards of $880,000, saying, would you and two party members of your choosing try to take on the Corrosion Dragon from Dragon Age Velgard? And you would have gotten double the money if you were able to get it done by April Fools. And several of you out there would sound out pretty good on this one by saying the following. You have really lost your mind, haven't you? With a dragon roar off in the distance. Huh, interesting. Another person would say, do you think we could take him? Only for the last person of Tosh to come from out of nowhere with a dragon roar saying, let's do this, with Nev in tow to get ready to fight that said dragon. And with the clock saying that it was just about 11:59 just before April Fool's Day for them to actually beat that said dragon. Congratulations to all of you. Yes, you won $880,000 for that said question. But to answer your said question, no, I haven't lost my mind yet, but you have tried to take on that dragon. And yeah, I do believe you can take that dragon on in the most craziest ways known possible, because I don't think I've ever seen anybody do a spiral spin with a sword into the head of a dragon to kill it before, which is very impressive. Bravo! But with that question out of the way, folks, we go into this week's $420,000 question, where we asked you for upwards of $420,000 and for the Eastermania World Heavyweight Championship. Would you and two of your other friends team up to fight against the Easter Bunny and Jay and Silent Bob in a 6-man match for that said championship that is worth upwards of $420,000? And for any of you out there who's able to complete this challenge before the end of WrestleMania, we will quadruple the prize money for you fans at home for that said challenge. But before you answer that question at home, folks, you're gonna have to wait until next week to get the answer and the money for it, you rabbit-fighting 420 fans out there, because Carla the Maestro is currently rolling out the machines, which means we've got to bring the Indy Radio Arcade for this week to an emphatic close. But don't worry, if you miss any of that 8-bit goodness we were able to give you for this week, we got you covered. Because you can catch this show again one more time, all the time, on our SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr pages, still all named the same, only known as Music Village Radio under the hashtag Indy Radio Arcade Level 221. And Carla the Maestro said if this was about 100 episodes less, it would have been perfect. I think you got your math wrong with that one. You really did. And if you guys also want to go ahead and catch this show again with the musical interludes, you can also head on over to our said Live 365 page, still named the same, only known as Music Village Radio. And for any of you out there want to find out what other crazy and zany things we still got prepared for this month of Fools, like a foolish challenge that I most likely am going to have to add more money to due to the fact that we were late by a week, then you can go ahead and check it out on our YouTube, Discord, and Twitter pages, still all named the same, only known as the Double Agent 0012. And before we head out for the night, we would like to thank, as always, you the game show contestants out there, for listening in to a very special Eastermania 420 month late starting edition of the Indy Radio Arcade.
We would also like to thank none other than you, the independent artists out there, for doing all that musical goodness like you always do. And keep up the great work, guys. And here's hoping your music gets featured during not only this challenge for entrances, but during an Easter egg hunt that may take place afterwards. And why? Because we believe in you guys. That's why. That's why. And speaking of people's music that may be featured in an Easter egg hunt, we would like to thank our musical guest for this week, none other than Tekno AXE with his said songs of Reprogrammed Reality, and of course for the song you're listening to right now of You Can't Dodge a Laser Chill Step Remix. That's wrapping things up for this week's edition of the Indy Radio Arcade. Like always, Tekno AXE, keep up the great work, and we can't wait to hear what you got coming down the tubes next. And finally, last but certainly not least, we would like to thank you, the independent gamers out there, for coming out with all those sweet, sweet video game hits, clips, and high scores that we had a chance to mention during this week's show. Like always, guys, keep them coming, because you never know what show might be coming around the corner next that will try to fit in with a holiday that we try to make up for last year. And a big thank you to all of you out there for making this happen too for that. So, hint, 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 hint. And I guess with the creepy janitor giving us that look to Van Moose, and with Carl and the Maestro getting their wrestling boots on to try to participate in this challenge with the creepy janitor, I'm DJ Smokey on behalf of Carl and the Maestro, and for this late start to a month of fools on an Easter like no other, saying, when there's smoke, there's fire. And we would like to thank you for playing a very special late April Foolin' Month Easter Mania 420 makeup of 8-Bit Goodness edition of the Indy Radio. Okay. We're finished, man. We're done. Game over, man. Game over. Happy Easter and good night, everybody.